As the saying goes, empowered women empower women. We gather some of the greatest leaders and change makers, our very own customers of Paperflite, to ignite conversations that inspire change. As we've interacted with each of them individually, we've often wondered how it would be to have all of them under the same roof. As we fulfill our curiosity, we also welcome you to join us to unfold very interesting and insightful stories that are about to be shared. Handing the reins over to our panelists for a humor-packed and straight-from-heart session as a Women in Leadership. In the light of International Women's Day 2023, Paperflite presents to you the Champions of Change.
Welcome, ladies, to Champions of Change. We're thrilled to have all of you here to discuss women's impact on leadership today. Our common theme that all of us share is Paperflite. And our collective experiences leading our departments using Paperflite. However, that may be the same. The difference between all five of us is the journey and challenges we've faced getting to where we are today. And that is something I'm very excited to discuss with you all and learn more about. Just to kind of give a little introduction of myself, my name is Tatiana Lim. I lead the marketing department for Connectivity Wireless, and leading my department is somewhere Paperflite kind of sort of comes into play as I use Paperflite to support my sales team and everything that they do. So that is a little bit about myself. I'd love to open the floor to hear your guys' introductions and also kind of talk about how Paperflite is something that you guys use and how you use it, as it is that commonality.
My name is Anissa de la Torre. I am actually French-German. Grew up in France, and I moved to the U.S. about 10 years ago, where I met my husband. I have 2 young kids, almost 2-year-old and an almost 5-year-old, both going on 14, very sassy and lots of attitude. Of a cat, and I work for Ethiopian. I'm the director of account-based marketing, strategy, and enablement and execution. I've been at Ethiopian for over 4 years, and I lead a great team of marketers. I have 3, soon to be 4 managers that are developing great account-based marketing campaigns. Ethiopian is a supply chain and channel software leader. And we have been using Paperflite for quite a long time. Sales team loves it. They use it a lot during sales cycles. So especially after the first connection has been made, and to share all kinds of great content with their prospects of customers. And usually we use it even after the RFP process, kind of the after sales, and we've had a great experience so far.
Okay. Good morning, everybody. Good afternoon. Good evening. My name's Britta Koch. I come to you from snowy Minnesota this morning. And I am with ServiceNow. I've been with the company about 13 years. And the last year and a half or so, I've been in the marketing group that does post-sales content marketing. That's where I got involved with Paperflite, because we've been trying to use to create some interactive documents that we can post on our community, because we really try to drive our post-sales questions to the community so customers can get their answers there. And we're trying to create interactive content that the customers will find really engaging and different, as opposed to our traditional white papers or workbooks or things like that. So I've been one of the cool things that we came up with was a game board idea, and I've worked with turns I want to take. That's been one of the really cool things that we've done with Paperflite. Personally, I'm a single mom with 2 kids. One's in college, aspiring to be an attorney. The other one is an aspiring actor, and you may see some furry critters go back and forth to the background, like right now.
So, hi everyone, my name is Rina Al-Haddadin. I'm originally from the Middle East, more specifically Jordan, but I moved to Canada just over 10 years ago to become a student, and eventually made my way to citizenship last year, so I'm very happy about that. I've been in the digital marketing area for over 7 years now, and more specifically in my current role at Irdeto, which I've been at for 5 years. working in the cybersecurity sector. I'm responsible for managing numerous web properties and creating and maintaining user-friendly and functional web pages for multiple purposes, so product launches, campaigns, landing pages, and corporate. And I work heavily with looking at data and traffic and quality assurance to make sure everything is running up to standard. And part of that is using Paperflite. So we've been using Paperflite and more specifically Clever Story as our asset management system, where we pretty much host the majority of our high value assets, and we focus on getting a lot of those for our campaigns as well. So I've been working with the team directly on that for the past few years, and it's been awesome.
My name is Sarah. I'm also Canadian. I actually live in the east coast of Canada, so literally in the Atlantic Ocean, in a place called St. John's, Newfoundland, Canada. So that's where I'm based. I am the marketing director for a company called Vision 33. They're basically what we do is we have automation and integration solutions to help transform businesses. I've been with the company a long time. I've basically grown up there. So I've been there for 20 years. I started out early in my career there. So everything's always been changing. So it always felt like I was changing jobs, even when I wasn't. And I have the privilege of managing just a great team of marketing resources, and yeah, we're responsible. I mean, we're in B2B, so we're responsible for, lead generation, inbound, outbound marketing, brand communications, all those things. We're newer to Paperflite. We came on board last year. I'm very passionate about content and content strategy. So we brought Paperflite in and we're loving it and just continuing to get the sales team on board with it. We're loving using the collections and we're finding new ways to even bring it into events and using collections there and not bringing so much paper collateral with us to events and things like that. So yeah, we're really excited to just kind of build on what we started last year.
Thank you, Sarah. Also, thank you, ladies. I'm based off your brief introductions. I'm very excited to see how this conversation is going to go. And speaking about our conversation today, we'll be covering a lot of key topics that I believe weigh on every woman's mind, starting with why women. Regardless of the industry, women and men have always been compared in the workplace, whether it's compensation or what makes them better leaders or more qualified. It's always something that's always top of mind. And starting with Britta, I kind of want to go into the question of, what do women bring to the table that men don't?
Well, that's a really good question. And I think, one thing we have to caveat this whole conversation on is that there's no absolutes, right? So you can't always say white men do this or women do that. But I really feel women bring a different perspective and probably a more holistic approach just because we have to manage more in our lives generally. I think all of us have read during the pandemic about how women picked up more of the childcare and responsibilities around the house. So I think by nature, we bring a more holistic approach to whatever we're doing.
That's a very excellent point because I definitely feel that, women in general kind of have a more empathetic and, approach to leadership or just working in general. And that can be very powerful, especially when managing teams, can empower better culture, more diversity and inclusivity in the workplace, and just empowering other women in the organization as well. And that characteristic comes in very handy.
Again, to repeat what Britta said, no absolutes, right? But I think most people agree that women tend to have a higher emotional intelligence. And if you've been told that emotions don't have a place in business and don't have a place at the table, that is very wrong. Emotional intelligence is, the ability to understand your own emotions, but also see and understand other people's emotions. What motivates them? When do they want to get out of the discussion, the deal, the business discussion, partnership? And having a high emotional intelligence helps people, and I think women, understand and have a better understanding really of what people are trying to get out of out of the discussion, the partnership, which is really critical to reach a win-win situation. Otherwise, you just know what you want. You pretend or you try to listen to what other people want, but getting to really see their perspective and try to influence it in some ways, or at least take it into consideration to find a happy medium.
And I agree as well. Like, I don't feel there's absolutes in this, but through my experience, yeah, I mean, empathy and compassion, have been so key. And in the market I work in, we're in B2B and, we're working with manufacturers, distributors, things like that. And I think this old idea of like, there's no emotion and decision making, or, especially when you're buying technology, things like that. And I remember going to a conference just before the pandemic, actually, and they kind of revealed once we got in there that the whole theme for B2B was about empathy and how do you infuse that into your internal communications, but also to your external communications to your prospects and your customers. And it was an eye-opener for a lot of people, because it was like, no, people don't make decisions based on emotions. And it's like, yes, they do. There's people behind these businesses. So, I see it externally, but obviously, leading with that within teams with empathy and compassion too.
No, I definitely agree with that. Sometimes they're in previous marketing roles, they're just like, oh no, you're showing too much emotion and you shouldn't be that way. So it's like, I've had to sometimes there's they're making me switch off my emotions, which is, how do you do that? But yeah, just kind of piggybacking off that first one, it is kind of, and you guys already brought up some key points and key characteristics that women bring to the table and men don't, and which make them effective leaders. But are there any other ones that we haven't brought up that you believe make women more effective leaders?
So I think one of the things that women bring to the table that perhaps men don't is we have learned over time how to be assertive in the workplace in a way without being aggressive, without pounding on the table. Because if we do that, we get, I guess, emotional, or that angry woman that's hard to work with. So I think one of the things we can bring is a way to be assertive and make a point without making a situation get really hostile. Because I think we've all been in meetings where men have kind of gone at each other's throats in the meeting, and we get really uncomfortable. And I think as women, we're not comfortable with that scenario. And also, if we, like I said, if we do act in that manner, then we genuinely get a bad reputation.
Yeah. And I think the other thing that, that I see, and again, I don't, it's a skill I see with women, but I see with men too, but and something I had to develop a lot was listening. And I think sometimes, and, especially if you happen to be in an industry that's a little bit more male dominated, it's like, oh, I have to have the loudest voice in the room, or, and I think there's great power in listening and being able to kind of read the room. And, that gets back to some of that emotional social intelligence, but being able to read the room a little bit and really kind of listen to what everyone's saying, and then be able to kind of synthesize that, or kind of come up with the next question that makes sense in the room. And I know for me in my career, that was a big learning experience. I used to measure my success of how many times did I insert my voice or speak up, versus learning, there's great power in just kind of taking all this in and listening, and then kind of, moving the discussion, forward from there.
And the angle, especially I would say mothers, if I can single out mothers, there's so many skills that we learn as mothers. Patience, negotiation, trying to negotiate with a 2-year-old is you need a lot of strength and patience. You need to be able to listen. Stamina and pushing yourself. It's hard to be a parent, and I think during that time, you learn to push your own limits. You learn to multitask. You learn to have that empathy towards another human being that needs your empathy. And all these skills can be absolutely brought back to the business. And I think it's undervalued what women parents. But again, I think there tends to be more burden, more of that on women and mothers. But all these skills that can be brought back to a business environment, and goes back to being able to listen, read the room, being adaptable. And it's not, of course, exclusive to women. It's not exclusive to mothers, but we do learn quite a great deal of these skills during that time.
All right. I agree with all of that. I was actually thinking, as you guys were talking, adaptability, I feel like is the most crucial one, because of just like you guys were talking about the settings that we're in and how men can be more aggressive and how we need to try and speak up, but at the same time, we kind of like dial it back at the same time. So I do believe that adaptability is like a top one amongst all of those. And you think there are different leadership styles between men and women? And how do those kind of different leadership styles impact their organization? And we can start with Sarah for this one.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think there can be, again, I've worked with some great female leaders. I've worked with some wonderful and learned from a lot of great male leaders too. I think in my own journey of kind of being around that and figuring out what my leadership style was, I think there's a place for like vulnerable leadership too as well. And I think sometimes we're afraid to show that and that could be seen as weakness. And my experience has been, especially over the last few years, is that, vulnerable but still courageous leadership can go a long way. And I was just sharing that, last year I had an incident and lost use of my dominant hand for a while. And, there was great vulnerability and having to show up to my team at times and say, like, I need help, without trying to pretend everything's okay. And just, every day trying to do all the same things. So I think that there's a place for that too as well. And I think it kind of opens up discussions and lets people's guards down. And it just helps with, having more open conversations too.
I think you touched on something that's really important about creating your own leadership style, because, there's all these books out there that say how to do it, what you need to do. And a lot of those are based on the white male paradigm of how to get ahead in business that you may not, as a female, feel comfortable with. I think it's really important for us to develop our own leadership styles. And I have an anecdote around this, and it'll sound like it's really self-serving, but it's not meant that way. The previous group that I was in, there was a young man in the group, and when I first joined the team, he's like, oh yeah, you got to come in with the first 60 days and make an impact and let everybody know, make a change or whatever, and I was like, okay. And as it turned out, both of us left the group after about 18 months, and he kind of left, and, they had a party for him and whatever virtually. When I left, my manager got onto our team call and talked about how I had changed how the group worked. And, that was because of subtle ways that I infiltrated myself into the team and brought my perspective to the rest of the team and, was persuasive enough that they could see my point of view and how to change work. So I felt like I came in with my own style, observed what was happening in the team, learned about how the team worked, and then decided how I could make an impact as opposed to coming in and, like feeling like I had to make a knee-jerk reaction and make a change. So really being comfortable with your own leadership style, I think, is my main point here.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've all probably seen this. I've seen multiple companies, but seen women kind of adopting this stereotypical, it's a man's world, so I need to act like a man, and I need to be tough, and I need to be, and we should be tough in a certain extent, but this iron fist attitude. And then I've seen great leaders, female and male, that achieve so much more with empathy. I think the leaders that again, men or women, but let's use the case of women that adopt that iron fist attitude because they feel like that's the only way they can climb up. It's very self-serving. They might manage up. They might show well in the upper management and show that they have things under control. But it's not good leadership. It doesn't inspire. It doesn't bring people up within the team. And I've seen fantastic example of women leading with empathy and achieving great results and inspiring. And I think the mentorship or showing the role model of showing that this is the kind of leadership that works and that is accepted. And for a company to accept that and recognize that as well.
Yeah, that's a great point. Ultimately it kind of comes down to having that transformational style or just, way of leading and really just focusing on building those relationships over time with your team or your coworkers and, fostering that sense of commitment, motivation, and just empowerment. That's proven to be very successful for both men and women, but also women specifically. So
Also see that with a lot of male leadership in previous roles that I've held. They kind of go around you, and they kind of give you the runaround instead of kind of just being like, this is what it is and this is how it is. And that's kind of something that I've noticed, a difference in male leadership versus female leadership. But kind of moving on to our next question, and it kind of ties in with what we just discussed, which is, how do you think having more women in leadership positions can lead to positive changes in organizational culture?
As I was getting ready to be on the panel today, I was thinking about this. In 2004, Volvo got a team of all female engineers together to build and design a car. And it was very different than what anybody would have expected. It had gull-wing doors, which were very modernistic, but they eliminated like caps on the windshield wiper refill. So some of it was a little maybe not realistic, but it also showed how differently a car would be designed if it was only designed by women. You know, in the headrest of the car, they had a place for your ponytail to go in. So I think having women in leadership roles helps us think about these things when we're doing design of products that make them safer for everybody. So I think that's another key thing that women can bring in leadership role.
Different perspective. Yeah. We also know a lot of medicines are not tested on women, right? So we just have one way, one view. And it's really not just women. I think it's diversity, right? Having a more diverse leadership, which is very male dominated today. So attracting talent, inspiring, having an impact on, gender gaps, but also policies and, I'm from Europe, right? So I had my 2 babies here in the US, and maternity was not really a thing. I was a little shocked about that. So, having this kind of, those kind of discussions and being able to have an impact on policies and to ultimately attract the right talent, whether it's male or female, but showing a diverse work environment.
Yeah, I go back to the emotional intelligence, but that, that self-awareness that you can bring to the table too as well. And just, one thing I see a lot of is energy. And just, I think what I've seen in women leaders around me and what I try and bring into is just some people don't realize the impact of their energy they bring into a room, and that your energy can be everything. And it really is your superpower, and acknowledging that and harnessing that. And I know that, I've realized there are times where in the past I've shown up and I can flatten a room with my energy if that's really what I wanted to do. And I don't, because that's not how I lead. But it's becoming more aware of that, and just the power of you showing up with that energy. And sometimes I'll take a couple minutes before a meeting and just kind of shake something off, because, you just want to bring that energy into the room, because it just brings up, that openness for everybody else, and the ideas start flowing and the creativity starts flowing. And, I think, again, I'm not going to say men don't bring that to the table, but I think, there's a lot of women that are very self-aware in that respect, and the impact of their energy. And again, as parents, we know that too. We know what the look can do across the room to our child in terms of, oh, I'm in trouble.
Moving to the next section, as women in leadership, there are many challenges that we face. And studies show that high-achieving women are often perceived as less likable than their male counterparts. Starting from Anissa, have you ever felt this likability gap? And how have you navigated this situation?
Fortunately, no, I haven't been in a situation where I feel like my leadership style or it shows my leadership style to be kind and leading with empathy. So I haven't been in a situation where I felt like I had to choose between being liked and being a leader.
Well, I spent about 10 years in the field at ServiceNow working with customers, deploying our product with them. And there were certainly times when there were people on the customer team, a person perhaps maybe that I didn't really like very much or found difficult to work with. But what I really focused on was the facts and what needs to be done, and, take the emotional side out of my reaction to that person. I might look at some person. I mean, I think we all look at people and we maybe make a snap first impression that can be really wrong. And I have some good stories about that I won't bore you with, but I think we've all been in that situation. But I think this whole question gets back to that study they did probably back in the 80s, the Heidi Rosenfield resume. And, they had the resume and they gave 2 copies to the students in the class. And one had Heidi's name on it, and the other one was like Harry Rosenfield, and had exactly the same information on it. But the students responded much more positively to the male name on their resume than the female name. And that gets back to this whole thing about, there are expectations for women in the workplace to be more likable. But I feel like the way I navigate that is to stay calm and matter of fact, without getting drawn into the negativity around that. And if somebody doesn't like me, that doesn't really bother me. I mean, once you've had your kids say, they hate you and you've never done anything for them, you kind of like that likability thing kind of goes out the window.
Yeah, and it's funny. I'm preparing for this, and I saw that question. I kind of laughed because I think my experience has been I've sometimes been told I'm too nice. And I remember somebody saying to me, not in our organization, but somebody professionally saying to me once, "You're too nice, and that's going to hold you back from going on and growing your career and being a leader." And I remember really being impacted by that and thinking, what that meant. And, I think niceness does go a long way. And I think, for me, it's been showing that just because I'm nice doesn't mean I'm naive. It doesn't mean I'm naive to what's going on in the room or to someone's energy, like I talked about before. But being nice, and just even as a leader, just remembering to say thank you because one of your team members went above and beyond to do something, I think is important. And, in our organization, service, having that service approach, even internally within the organization, has always been looked upon as something that's important. I think being nice doesn't mean you have to say yes to everything and pivot from your own, agenda and to-do list. But I do think there's power in being nice. And I don't think, I hate when I hear that said, especially when I hear it said to women, because no, I think there's power in being nice and just, saying thank you and, and being open.
Sarah, and, because ultimately, under all of this, we're all just humans, right? So you have to kind of reach out to that human side of things, because that's how we are. At the end of the day, we're all humans, and you can try to be as tough and very assertive or aggressive in your style, but people are humans and they tend to respond to the human side of things. So I think that's very important.
I recently had a vice president over our team who was this petite woman, and she's very nice, but she's hard as nails underneath of that. To Sarah's point, just because you're nice doesn't mean you can't say no. But you're not burning bridges.
I wholeheartedly agree with that. I'm always told that I'm too nice for my profession, as I do deal with, because most of the people that I personally deal with is my sales team. And I've always thought salespeople to be very tough people, really tough skin. And when I'm working with them, they're just like, "You're too nice for this." They're like, how? Just say no. And then even when I say no, they're like, "Your no was too nice." And I'm just like, I don't know what to tell you. This is just my persona and my personality. But to kind of wrap up the conversation with a little bit of fun question. And it's also kind of discussing the future of women in leadership. If you could travel 50 years into the future, what would you hope to see in terms of progress for women in leadership roles?
Why do we need to say women leaders and men leaders? Why can't we just be leaders, right? And I was like, this is very simple, but if you really think about it, it's not really how things are nowadays. It's, you'd have to say, oh, women leaders, and that's a very, specific thing and rare. And, it gives that impression that, this is something that we need to work toward, but, in the future, versus when you say leaders, you automatically think of man. But, in the future, I really hope that that's not the case anymore. And when you say a leader, someone would actually ask you, or maybe not even ask you, is it a woman or a man, versus just automatically assuming that it's going to be a male leader. So this is just something that's kind of been brewing in my head that I know it is pretty somewhat common these days, but I definitely think there's a lot of room for improvement in a lot of industries.
I'm at risk of getting on my soapbox with that question. I think 50, you said 50 years, was it 50 years? Might not be long enough. But if I'd like to see more women in powerful position, whether it's corporate or governments or powerful organizations, I think we would have a more humane world. So this is my soapbox. There are lots of things that, from environmental impact and a lot of things, this race to more money, more revenue, every you hear about all these billionaires, like, what is that for? What is all this for, And we're not being better human beings by being richer or having corporates are, crazy rich, crazy, successful. What does that mean? Success. And, so I think having more women in power and powerful positions and leadership position would lead to a more humane world. Maybe it sounds very naive. I think there's some truth to this. I'd like to see it happen. And then you can prove me wrong.
I agree with a lot of what you're saying. And on the top, I would just say I'd love to not hear questions anymore like, well, how are you going to manage having a baby and working? Or why is having a baby, a maternity leave, considered disability in the U.S.? No, it's not a disability to have a baby. It's what, our bodies do. But, right. Right. I mean, sometimes I want to take these people aside, especially if you were on an airplane and somebody's mad because somebody's kid is screaming. And I'm like, do you realize that was you? At one point we all started there, right? So it's not like we just sprang from Zeus's head like Athena, but I think one of my things is to just change the whole paradigm of what is success. But what if the paradigm shifted to people could define their own success? And success didn't mean managing. The more people you manage, the more successful you were. When I was in my 40s, right after coming through the dark side of my divorce, I met with a CIO from Tasty Cake and, had a kind of a mentoring session with her. And she's like, well, it's not too late for you to be CIO. And that was really empowering to me because I was very technical at the time. It's like, okay, well, so I could still realize some career goals, that are pretty lofty. But then I sat back and I thought about it. It's like, do I want to be a CIO? Do I want all that responsibility? No, I don't. I want to be able to take time off with my family and not feel tethered to my phone all the time, and I'm happy being an individual contributor and I can help people along with their careers and I can still provide leadership as an individual contributor without being a manager. So I would really like the paradigm to shift to, change how we define success. And how we define it for men and women doesn't have to be different. Because, there's some men, like my ex-husband, would have loved to have been a house husband and taken care of the kids. But he couldn't do that because his family put so much pressure on him to be in the family business and have a career. Well, what if it's okay for a man to stay home and take care of his kids, right? Instead of saying, we have this one model because one size doesn't fit all.
And I think further to Britta, I completely agree with you. To your point, I think something that comes up a lot of times is when people are wanting to get into leadership, it's like, why do you want to be a leader? And what does it mean to you? Because just having the title of, manager, director, whatever that is, that's not still being a true leader, and really understanding the power of self-leadership. I remember reading a book so long ago and I think it was called The Leader That Has No Title by, I think it was Robin Sharma. And, in my organization at the time, it was, this was many, many years ago. It was just me and my functional area trying to build that out. And it was like, what does self-leadership look like? And how can I be a leader without having reports, and what does that look like? And, and that's really what I try to infuse in my team too, where I can, of yes, there's career paths and people want to see growth. And I understand all that. It's not just about having a lot more work on you over time, but also, how can you lead every day and what does that look like for you? And how your own leadership is affecting your teammates every day in that. So I think it's powerful to also kind of look at what leadership does mean, corporately to different people.
Kind of piggybacking on Rina's thing about not just it being women, but also kind of including everyone. I kind of just want to see people kind of striving to be the best that they can be. Kind of don't settle for less. You know how much you're worth, and know that what you're worth can help you achieve so many different things. Because when I first saw that question, I was kind of thinking, yeah, women, we're going to do what we're doing, but also kind of including men as well. And also just kind of including now that there's a lot of different genders, kind of including everyone. Transgender, non-binary, all of that. It's kind of in the time period that we are, it's not just men and women. There's so many in between and so many people that I hope kind of strive to be the best that they can be. So that's kind of where I see not just women, but the world in the next 50 years.
I love what you just say about be your best self and you can do more than you think you can do. I had a eye-opening moment a few years ago listening to a podcast, and I think I read an article about it later on, and I share this with every person, every woman, especially around me, that confidence peaks for women, for girls at age 8, and that's really sad. That means after age 8, the confidence goes down. And it's a multitude of things that language we use with our kids. So I'm hyper conscious about this, having a boy and a girl. But we use words. We teach our girls to be great, to be perfect A's, to follow the rules, to be proper. And then we teach more and just subtle words we use, or T-shirt that's written something on it, right? Or when they're on TV or in classrooms. We teach boys to try harder, to not cry, to jump higher, to push themselves more, and all these subtle things make it that women tend to not go for the promotion, not ask for what they deserve. Feel like if they deserve a promotion, they'll be given a promotion, which is not how the world works. They don't go for the harder jobs. They go for jobs that they know they can do for sure, because there's that just slight lack of confidence that they could do it. While men do all the fake it till you make it. They go for the promotion, they go for higher jobs, and they take more risks. And I think, I think we get in our own ways in our head, like you said, Tatiana, you can do so much more than you think. And this kind of was an eye opener to me, because I felt like I am going to ask for that promotion. I am going to go for that job. Every time I've changed jobs, I go up to the next level, whether I think I can make it or not. They can be the judge to tell me if I cannot make it. Until then, I'll do it, right? So I know I've had these discussions with my sisters, having to tell them, no, you can do this. Be confident. And I'm super careful on how I raise my kids, trying to think of what am I saying that could lead to certain behavior in these kind of an unknown worry that we are, we're not good enough, or we need to be taking something more safe. So be the best that you can be. I love that, Tatiana. And yes, you can do a lot more than you think. Just get out of your own way, really. For everybody, I guess, right? Diversity for everybody. I agree with that too.
I would say I'll add on something real quick to piggyback on what Anissa was saying earlier about language and how it's important. So I have 2 girls, and I have told them they can't say no if you don't ask. And no isn't the end of the world.
So for my last little tidbits, I'm kind of taking everything that you guys said kind of as like words of wisdom, because I am still learning and I'm still kind of crafting my leadership role, and I'm still trying to get used to leadership, trying to learn how to be assertive, trying to stay true to myself, but also kind of trying to achieve the goals that my company wants to achieve. and trying not to screw that up. So thank you for that, guys. And thank you, Paperflite, for this opportunity.
Thank you very much. That was really awesome.
Thank you.